lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and today I have an awesome indie creator that I have discovered over all this time that I've had stuck at home during quarantine, and it's an extreme pleasure to be able to talk with him and kind of share his work with you guys today. Today I have Jonathan Kociuba with me.
Oh, welcome. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Man. So for those people that aren't familiar with your work, I was wondering if you could just tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I've been in and out. So I kind of came back to comic books the last 3 to 4 years. I started with a comic book called All of This, which was debuting at TCAP in Toronto, and I started doing anthologies. And I also do at the same time. I'm in a band, and I'm also part of like the Toronto music community, and I would do concert posters and kind of put those two things together and stuff. And I think recently I finally got a great gig doing a Holy Mountain called me up, and they got me to do Death Blazers.
Yeah,
definitely. It's the best gig ever right now.
Yeah, so, man, I love the book. I think it's fucking really dope. But before we get into the book, I just want to ask a little bit more, because everybody that I talk with, I always like to ask how they got into comic books, because all of us have gotten in comic books in different ways. Different things pique our interest, right? So I was wondering how you got into comic books as a kid, and what really started your love for comics.
Well, right off the bat, like when I was a kid, like my brother was really into comic books, and so I remember like I've always had comic books in my life in some capacity. My first comic store back in the day was called Red Nails, and I remember this is like a horror story kind of thing, but I got introduced to Ninja Turtles back before the cartoon, and as a 5-year-old boy, seeing an indie comic book, I misunderstood it as a coloring book.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh no!
So I remember going like, oh, like it's a coloring book, like 5 years old. So and it was like, oh crap. I was really lucky too. I lucked out because I always wanted to be a comic artist, and I lucked out was my mom. She worked at a photocopying place in Toronto, and she would always come by and give me paper all the time, and I would just draw all the time on paper. And one of the craziest things was, are you familiar with the artist David Ross?
That sounds very familiar. I'm sure. Probably.
He did West Coast Avengers near the last of its run. Yes. He did Mockingbird's death and stuff. So he was working for Marvel West Coast Avengers at the time, and he would use that he would go there to fax his pages to Marvel. And so the next day, so my mom would come back from work, and she would have the photocopies of the faxes of West Coast Avengers stuff, like before like the pencils. And
that's dope.
Yeah, and I remember I was so excited, right? And I drew the superhero picture. I'm like, mom, give us a David Ross. Tell me what he thinks. And then the next day, she gives it to me, and he basically completely like hacks it up. Like I'm a 7-year-old kid going like, you got to work on your anatomy, study this. And it was really cool because it was harsh, right? But it was like it kind of gave me a building block of what to work on. Of like, oh, if you're serious about doing this, this is what it takes to to make a great art or to be an artist, comic artist. And I remember having that, and remember like using the wizard stuff, like even the Brutes and Babes section.
Yeah, right. I remember that shit.
And seeing Bart Sears like how I so like artists do framework and build myself from that and I've always like I think my brother and I before we'd always do these we'd always make up our own comic books as well too, and like photocopy it and like we basically would just like have our own universe, and like I don't know, like, it's so funny, like you never think about like how like it's kind of ridiculous now. You're like, oh, like we treat it like as a serious universe.
Yeah, of course, man. It's cool. I mean, I also would draw when I was younger. I don't know what it was that kind of stopped me from doing it, but I mean, I used to kind of create my own stuff too, and then it just like I mean, I don't even have any of my old sketchbooks that I used to draw in. I mean, I moved so much that a lot of that shit just got kind of lost. But yeah, that's cool, man. I love hearing those stories of like as a kid, you creating your own comic books. I think that's dope. I mean, you hear it from everybody. I mean, like Eric Larson from Savage Dragon, you know what I mean? Like that's about creating his own like 80-page comic book from like, photocopy paper, which is really cool, man. But you mentioned Wizard. I gotta ask you about Wizard. Wizard was huge for me when I was
Yeah,
a kid. I remember the first issue I have. I recently rebought it because like I don't know why, but I threw all of them away one time in a move because I'm like, this is just too heavy to constantly be lugging around every time I move. And but I actually just I guess I kept my first Wizard and I found that recently. It's all like bent to shit, like torn up. How important was Wizard to you as a kid? Like, were you reading it on a monthly basis, and did you learn about a lot of books through Wizard? Because I know a lot of us, especially the kayfabe group,
yeah.
you're a part of. You know, like we all talk about Wizard. We love the episodes by Jim and Ed that when they do them. So, can you share your experience with Wizard? Because a lot of people of our generation probably don't even, or that are younger than us, don't even know what the fuck Wizard is.
Yeah, I try to explain to my kids what Wizard is. So for me, Wizard. So the first issue I got with Wizard was when they first debuted Artsy Bar. I used to like I used to pronounce his name as Artibit. I thought it was that you never know people's names for the
Yeah,
longest
that's true.
time. Like the worst one right now is like Joe. Like I always pronounce it Joe Madura, and I found it was Joe Madiara. Like within the last 2 years, I'm like what all this time for? I'm trying
Yeah,
to like
I would just call him Joe Mad because I was like, this is
yeah.
I'm gonna try to pronounce it.
Yeah, but it was the art tip art one where it was the cover had it had the three X-Men girls. It had like I think Jean Grey. I think it was issue 24 or something or 25.
Oh, okay. So earlier than me for sure. Okay.
Yeah, and I remember so for me back in the day was I had this weird relationship with the Image coming in where I love the artists in Image, but I really love Marvel. So a part of me was like I was hoping that Marvel would always win in some way because it was like, it's like, man, I love the X-Men. Like I don't want the X-Men to go away. I always felt threatened. So when Art to Bar came in, at first I was like, oh my gosh, Marvel got a new weapon. They got a Jim Lee clone, and it was
Yeah.
like they're back. And I remember that whole early 90s was crazy because you'd love an artist and then you would see like you flip through the Marvel pages and you see like in the what's that like that order ad like you can order comic books through subscription.
Are you talking? You're not talking about the previews catalog, are you?
No, I'm talking about like the in actual comic
Oh,
book.
in the comic book where you could like fill it out and like check off the boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'd always see
see
like
that.
you would see the next Image comic book that's going to debut, and you're like, ah, shit, they got Jim Lee. Like, oh,
Yeah.
crap. They like because they got Todd, right? And you see like the Spawn thing, and I remember seeing those for the first time, and but at the same time, those comic books as well too really like as much as I was. They really like fueled a lot of like the enthusiasm towards everything. So I remember even in school, kids were like really into comic books at the time because of Wizard and because of Image. I mean, obviously there's a whole collector's aspect of things, but I remember like every month you'd look at the top 10 list and going, oh my gosh, Todd McFarlane's still there, which is kind of crazy. I thought that was kind of a little shady now thinking about it, right?
Yeah, it's kind of fucked up. I mean, I like I said, I threw out pretty much all my Wizards, and I've been going back. The kayfabe channel kind of inspired me. I'm like, fuck, I kind of want to get some Wizards. I didn't get a lot of the ones they were going through because I'm like, well, if I really want to look at it, I'll just go look at the video. So what I did was I bought some of the ones that I remembered really liking as a kid based on the interviews, and then I've been reading. I got some like of the ones that they haven't done yet. Like in the 80s and the 90s and stuff. 84 was my first issue, so I had already been collecting comic books for a long time before I discovered Wizard. I just never saw it, and it is funny looking back and seeing who was on their top 10, and I easily could have put other people in those slots anyway. What I mean? Like knowing what was coming out back then, and it's clear. I think a lot of that was that was also the speculation stuff all back then. That was just like it's almost like you were buying a spot, or whose ass they wanted to kiss. That's what I look at it as,
Especially Todd, right? Like I mean, like it's so funny that you realize like how little McFarlane drew Spawn and how much Greg Capullo drew Spawn.
Yeah, like, dude, it's a trip.
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute, like you realize I think like what how many did Spawn did you do the first 15 issues or even less, like Todd?
I feel like there was like a 3-issue arc that he didn't draw. I think it was issues. I could be wrong. I think it's 13 to 15 that Capullo drew, and then Capullo was off the book, and then Todd continued to draw. And I think that was when he was doing Spawn Batman. I think that's when he kind of took over, and then I think 22 is when Capullo took over full time.
Oh wow.
Yeah, 'cause I just recently got like a huge run of Spawn from issue. I already had number 1, so I got from number 2 to like issue 100 and something for like $40. I mean,
Oh,
like, ridiculously cheap because I was just like, I want to read this Spawn. I never read it. I had like bits and pieces. But yeah, it is kind of funny. I don't think people really realize. I mean, same thing with Jim Lee and Wildcats, though, right? Like he only did so many. And then you look at Rob Liefeld with Youngblood. How many issues did he really draw? There wasn't even that many issues.
the crazy thing, I remember like back in the day with Liefeld. It's funny now because now I'm having after even listening to our observations.
Yes, I love that fucking podcast, dude.
I feel like Rob is. I'm trying to like illustrate trying to create a narrative here, but you know, a situation where like two parents are divorced and the one parent is talking bad about the other parent, and then you grow up and you're an adult and you confront them and you find out that that was the parent that loved you all this time, or he was the guy that was nice. I kind of feel that with Rob with Wizard, like because all my information about Rob was within Wizard, right? Especially the Fighting American story stuff when Rob was
clarifying. Dude, that's so funny. I was just listening to that episode last night. I was literally just listening to it.
Because I remember back then where we would see. I remember my brother and I, we would even collect the preview guides as well too, and so we'd see like, oh my gosh, like look what Rob's doing. He has the Fighting America thing with the Silver Skull character, and it's so hilarious.
Yeah,
the observation thing is crazy too because it's the way I describe it to people is are you familiar with the Quincy Jones, the infamous Quincy Jones interview that happened last year?
No, I didn't know. I mean, I love Quincy Jones. I didn't know he.
Yeah. But Quincy Jones, I think last year he had this interview that basically created he didn't give a shit, and he's a guy who has nothing to lose. Yeah. And so he's like crapping on like Paul McCartney, going like, "Oh man, you thought you're a great bassist? Like, surprise, motherfucker!" Goes, "We push your tracks," and then he said like Richard Pryor had sex with Marlon Brando. You know, like he basically didn't care, right? And then apparently his daughters had to talk to him afterwards, saying that you have to shut up, like you have to keep. But I feel like
that's crazy.
Yeah, and Rob Liefeld is in that situation where he has was it quote unquote fuck you money, and he's like, and he's basically like, who's gonna stop? Yeah, I mean, who can stop him now, right? He's kind of surpassed like comic book success or influence that he can kind of just say whatever he wants, and like it's really funny because it's just like unfiltered type of idea of his stories and stuff, and he has receipts, which is crazy too.
Yeah, and what's really interesting too is that like if he were lying, right, or if he were, let's say, stretching the truth, there would be people saying stuff or clapping back at him, and nobody's really saying anything, which leads me to believe that this is pretty much mostly true. Like, yeah, he relates a lot of it to himself and his experience, but like hearing stuff about like DC, because I'm a huge DC guy. Like DC was how I got into comic books. Flash was the first comic book I ever got when I was like 5 or 6. And so like hearing him talk about like Dan DiDio and stuff, and I was like, dude,
oh my gosh.
I was like, this fool's crazy. Like, no wonder they had to get his ass out of DC Comics, you know? Like, or when he was talking about like the Heroes Reborn and Jim Lee trying to take over Marvel, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't know this stuff. Shit. So like, it's just, I love that podcast. You know what I mean? Like, and I do think it's really cool to kind of like to see his side of it, because, you know, for years a lot of people talked a lot of shit about Rob, right? Cap's tits. I mean, I think he brought that up on the episode I listened to a couple days ago, and he's like it wasn't even in a comic book, it was a promo ad, you know what I mean? Like but I digress. You know, let's talk about you. I mean, I know I kind of went off topic, but I love talking about Wizard, especially the people that I know grew up reading it, because I don't really there's not a lot of us left that like really remember Wizard, unless we're in the kayfabe group. You know what I mean? And I don't really see anybody in person. But I do want to ask. You know, we've talked about some artists and people that you were like emulating too with your mom bringing home Dave Ross's stuff. But who were some of the artists that you really latched onto when you were younger, and even as you got older and started, you know, like really started drawing more?
So when I was younger, I was really inspired and influenced by Todd McFarlane, because him being a Canadian and being on top of the game was kind of like that idea of showing the possibilities of like, oh, like there's a possibility of me doing comic books one day because of this person that was there. I started going with him, and I was really following. And I realized too that Eric Larson too I liked a lot, and I've kind of had this new realization that Eric Larson was my real father in the Spider-Man thing, of like, like the guy who like, because I look back at the artwork, right, and I see like of what I like now, what I like then, and I try to see what it holds up, and I feel like the Eric Larson, his last Amazing Spider-Man run was like some of the best Spider-Man's like action stuff I've ever seen. Like just the way how kinetic his energy is. And I've kind of revisited that also by collecting the old Savage Dragon. I've got the 2 volumes of Savage Dragon recently, and it just like it's so fun like to read it. Like it's just every 4 pages there's a fight scene. It's like it's I think Eric Larson is that kid that gets that just basically, I think he appeals to everyone because he's just doing whatever the hell he wants. He kind of just feels like doing something. He just writes it. I evolved to that. Joe Quesada as well too. I got to Joe Quesada when he did X Factor.
Oh, okay. I never read his X Factor.
Yeah, it was like X Factor and Ninjak. I never really, and he did Ash and that stuff that he was going there and stuff. And I really liked when Quesada joined Marvel. And be like with Marvel Knights and that brand. I mean, aside from the Punisher, Angel, Killer.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we forget about that one. I think swept under the rug.
Yeah, under the rug. But like like even like the Dotsons, like their Spider-Man. Even the Dotsons run at Gen X was amazing too. I love their run and stuff. Yeah, I was kind of all over the place in that part of it. The recent ones now, the ones like we're fast forwarding now. Everyone says this because it's true. Everyone's favorite artist now is Daniel Warren Johnson.
I mean, yes, he's fucking amazing. I mean, I fucking love his art. I wish he did more. I wish I could get a monthly dose of his art.
Yeah.
On whatever. I don't care what the book is. It could be about a fucking dog walking down the street. He would find a way to make that shit badass.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like even his Instagram account and his commissions. Like
yes, dude. The Rocktober, that shit was so dope.
Yeah. Or his Akira, his Akira illustrations, like the cityscape, and or his Galactus POV, like that's but him, another artist I also kind of look at, like I study his work, and I study Scott. I think it's he's from Canada too. He's Scott Heppard. He's doing the MODOK series.
Oh, I haven't had a chance to read the MODOK. Have you?
Yeah, good? But I look at Daniel Warren Johnson's artwork right now because I study it for. He does a great. He has great techniques to show motion, and I look at certain people. I look at what it kind of appeals to me, and I kind of like study stuff. Like so, for instance, like recently I look at a lot of Stuart Immonen stuff.
Yes.
And I think Stuart Immonen may be the best comic artist in the sense of like within the monthly comic artist, because he draws tight, he draws fast. And his like compositions are like amazing. You can simplify his compositions. Yeah. You can like whenever I look at his artwork, I learn so much from it. I'm just like, yeah, okay. Like I feel like I'm a better artist just by reading a book of his all the time.
Yeah, he's an elite artist for sure. And I think that you mentioned Daniel Warren Johnson, and I think he's quickly becoming right up there in the upper echelon, like in more people's eyes, right? Especially with the Wonder Woman Dead Earth book which was fucking insane.
Greatest weapon ever.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, dude. And I can tell in your Death Blazers, I can see the Daniel Warren Johnson influence now that you mention it, because I'm thinking back when I was reading the comic. So that's cool that I don't hear enough people talk about it. I discovered it because of my manager, because I work at a comic book shop, and I've been going there for years, right? And he turned me on to Daniel Warren Johnson's like Murder Falcon, and that book he did with Donny Cates. I can't remember the book that he did.
Is it Ghost
Trucker? Ghost Fleet.
Ghost Fleet, yeah.
Yeah, so like that stuff, and then the Extremity, like that dude's just on fire, dude. His art is fucking good. But so I wanted to, I discovered your work through the Kayfabe group. And I don't remember if I saw it on, I don't know if I saw it on if it was in the group or if I saw it on one of the mailbag episodes. I can't really remember, but I was wondering, has any of that exposure led to like new fans?
So with Instagram, like I'm always trying to like be realistic with the comic book industry, and like I think right now I think there's a challenge for people who are creative, that we also have to be creative in how we reapply, how we approach, like in the business sense of how being more viable. Like for instance, like the unfortunate circumstance sometimes is like what I did the whole mailing. I designed these mail envelopes because I wanted to kind of create an incentive for someone willing to pay postage for one comic book. And so I was trying to find ways to be like, you know, something where I can do kind of trade off and kind of create a whole package. And I found that with that and Instagram, I'm always very hesitant on social media to be in general, because I always found that like, especially now, like I refuse to, I try to live my life pretending that Twitter doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I don't have a Twitter account, but like everyone says something on Twitter, I'm like, oh, what's that? I try to pretend not to know what exists in that. And Facebook, I had to really I think the last 2 years, I realized it's really affecting my like anxiety and stuff, where you see a bunch of stuff going on and you don't really have the power to do anything. So it's kind of it's in the back of your head. So Instagram, though, it's a weird thing where I don't like, it's not perfect, but I do get a lot of exposure on Instagram. And so after watching even The Social Dilemma, that documentary on Netflix,
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's everyone has to see it eventually. But it's but basically what I did was I limited now to like I only have Instagram on my tablet. And so what I do is, instead of having my phone, what I do is, if I'm gonna pick up my art tablet, I'm gonna draw. It's a kind of a thing where I have to make it. I have to trick myself to associate, to work harder and stuff. But the envelopes thing worked really well. I think that I try to like I talked to this other local Toronto artist, Eric Kim. He kind of was like mentoring me and stuff, and we were talking about how to like make Instagram work for you rather than the other way around. And we learned that whenever you do like whenever the artists, we find that artists are just working really hard to make individual sketches every day that create new content. But what happens is, we learned that when people go up the wall, they're gonna miss half the stuff that you post on a daily basis. So you want to do things, it's not like really spamming, but you want to have something consistent, like that will basically be familiar. So when you post something constantly, there has to be some kind of continuity with your work. So like, for instance, like the envelopes, I would make sure the envelopes are there and have the cover for Loverman, for the comic book I was pushing. So that basically people eventually, when I start posting a week of different envelopes, there's something consistently looking about them. And at the same time, people are familiar with like the you know, my cover and that part of it. So it's like, it's kind of those interwoven things. And I found out that technique was like was very successful in that sense. Like I saw that there's a difference in approach of people more interested, and people were familiar with stuff. Even when Jim Rugg had this really great advice with his Street Angel idea with this powdered pink cover, where he said that he went to a comic store and he looked at the least color there and trying to stand out from that. So what I did was, before I even designed the cover, I went to my local comic store and took a picture of the rack, and I looked at what colors are not there. And so I made Loverman on purpose. I made it to like a yellow color, so that it's there, you can see it, it's going to stand out in the rack, right, and attention and stuff. It's just like weird things like that. And so I'm trying to develop, it's a weird thing I'm trying to finite more. I'm still trying to figure things out, to be honest. And I think with the Holy Mountain thing, collaboration, that part of it where they commission stuff, I think that's an interesting, different way of approaching comic books in that sense as well too. Having like a t-shirt company that, you know, does for like, they're more into the musical metal stuff, that they're basically they're pushing the comic book and stuff. So that I'm curious to see where this is gonna go and stuff.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about how that comic book came about? Because I've never heard of Holy Mountain until you told me about Death Bludgers and you had them send me a copy, which I absolutely fucking loved. I mean, you said they talk about outlaw comics on the Kayfabe channel. That's a fucking outlaw comic book.
Oh, thanks.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Holy Mountain, I don't know. It's hard to describe what their business is. Like I said it, they're a metal t-shirt company, but they sell like Godzilla rare like toys. They have like this t-shirt as well, this hard-boiled t-shirt. Like memorabilia t-shirts and stuff. They sell a bunch of those stuff, but they commission different artists to do their character called Frank, who's like he's a Templar, and he's their mascot of the company. And so what they do is you commission different artists to have their own iterations of it. And so they liked Loverman a lot, the comic I just did, and they ordered some copies off me. And so they asked me if I was willing to just draw a t-shirt design for it. And so I was thinking that I wanted to like really make something really crazy out there. So I put their character in armor, and he's riding the original first iteration was the skull was I got an ape skull, a fiery ape skull.
Mm-hmm.
with a sword, and I wanted to have this kind of cool thing. And then they liked it a lot that they wanted to make a comic book based on that one image, and
Dope.
then they teamed me up with a writer, Brockton McKinley, and yeah, it was great. Like me, Brockton and I are it was kind of cool. Like we're on the same page and we kind of share the same brain. And then a lot of like Death Blazers is just us playing with toys. That's basically what like Death Blazers is. All the times I played with toys as a kid is now all that stuff, all those kind of concept ideas are coming out in the comic book itself.
Yeah, I mean it's a fucking awesome book. Anybody, and I will I'll drop the links down below for where you guys can get the book because you guys have to check it out. And I want to know when can we expect another issue of that?
Well, right now I am finishing. I just finished all the inks for the pages. I'm starting doing coloring. So my goal is to have the art done and everything will be done by the end of this month. So maybe by January next issue will come out.
Awesome, dude.
And,
yeah. I know you've also written your own stuff as well. Like so when you're doing a book all by yourself.
Yeah.
How do you write yourself a full script, or what do you do first? Do you just, if you know the story in your head, do you just draw out the pages and then script it afterwards? Like
so there's two ways I've done it. So I do things where it's very loose. So with Loverman, I wrote a script and I planned it out rough, and then I went over with Eric Kim again, and we were going over the ideas of what works, what doesn't work, and he was giving me suggestions, and then I would go back and I would apply those type of things and I would write it. But the one thing I wouldn't do is I wouldn't do a tight dialogue script. I would have something. I would always change dialogue within the last minute. Like I would write all the dialogue, all word bubbles first, and then I would read to myself, and I would try to like see if I cringe. I try to like reduce the cringe factor of like, and then I go, okay, well, I gotta fix that. And then I try to. I basically see it like I don't know if you're familiar with this, but sometimes when people film stuff, like they'll like improvise a bunch of ideas, and they'll get the best idea to kind of like do it. It's almost like that. It's like a improv kind of style of dialogue in that sense, where it's like I know what they wanted to say, like I know what the page is about, and then I just go about to kind of like I try to like think about, okay, well, all right, this is missing. Okay, he said this word twice, or it's this is kind of redundant. So it's like, okay, well, I try to like refine that. And again, I'm still need to work on that part of it. Like it's weird when someone says like artist writer. I'm like, oh, the writer part, like you're like,
yeah.
Okay, sure, like it doesn't cue. I'm like, oh yeah, you're talking to me. Okay, all right.
Yeah. And is there anything else besides Death Blazers that you're working on right now?
Well, I just collaborated with artist Casey Parson, who actually he's doing his writing debut within an anthology called Cauldron magazine. Cauldron is basically like a it's like a Canadian version of heavy metal. Like they basically are on volume 4. And Casey as well too. Casey he recently just did a variant crossover cover.
Oh, the Donny Cates book?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's one of those. It's a store exclusive ones. Do you guys have that at your place too as well? You guys
we don't. I mean, we don't really do store exclusives at my shop. I mean, because you have to order so many copies of a book to get the store exclusive, and sometimes it's not cost effective. You know what I mean? Like you have to order so many fucking books. So then you're left with like we have one for Usagi Yojimbo, that relaunch that happened a few years ago. We had a store exclusive. We have so many copies still in the store. So
that's I remember the comic store I go to. They had the Last Rodent stuff.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah,
that book was insane. We didn't even get all our copies, and that book fucking was already first week. It was like what, $30? I think people were selling it for. I mean, it's insane, dude.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask too. So now that you're doing stuff with Holy Mountain, what would you say is your primary way of getting your work out there? Do you just is it mostly self-publishing besides that, or do you work with other smaller publishers?
No, it's basically now is it's a combination of me doing self-publishing and going out and pitching ideas with people. I think for me personally, I can see a certain benefit of self-publishing because I feel like you have a certain control over your work. And again, I'm trying to figure out how to go about things differently. I think we live in a better time right now where, as an independent publisher, you have more access towards reaching out to people. But at the same time, it's like this thing where I'm trying to figure out, like, especially after this COVID thing, of what things will look like afterwards. Yeah, because it's like because comic conventions. I even tried to do a thing where I changed my strategy with comic conventions, where instead of doing comic conventions, I would just go to horror conventions instead, because I felt like I'd be like kind of like the person that kind of stands out with different content. Like the only comic guy at a horror convention would be much better than a bunch of comic guys, while different people competing with the same person and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to find these different ways of doing stuff like that, or making up making up your own events and those things. But those are the things like where I think eventually I might collaborate with a business person.
Have you ever thought about Kickstarter, or is that not a route that you like to do?
I do. You know what? I'll get there. Like, it's Kickstarter. I always feel like, so I think with Loverman, my goal is to, because what I'm doing with Loverman is every issue has a song. I write a song for each issue, and eventually what I want to do is I'm talking to friends of mine where I actually want to create a band and actually create an actual EP that goes along with a trade. Because basically the whole idea is that Loverman is going to be an album. That's the whole idea. Each issue is an album, and that I want to my huge ambitious goal is to have Loverman come out with a 7-inch vinyl.
Sick. That's dope, dude. That's an awesome idea.
Yeah, so it's like basically you buy a record and you have the comic book with it and stuff, and then the soundtrack of the comic book is the chapters are the tracks and stuff.
Dude, that's really awesome. I definitely want to see. I want to see that come to life, because that's a fucking dope idea. I don't think I've ever seen that before, so I'm very excited to see that come out. And I did want to ask, you mentioned Daniel Warren Johnson, but what books or other creators are you currently into right now?
I've been reading what stuff now. Pink Lemonade's pretty cool. That one's really
by
cool.
Nick Agnetti.
Yeah. I love the style, like the artwork style. It's really, really cool. Like I love how clean it is, and I can totally see the Mike Allred. I think Mike Allred them have been pushing it as well too. But I can totally see, it's reminiscent of that whole thing of that part of it. After watching Kayfabe, I've been going digging and finding old issues of stuff.
Yeah, same here.
So it's like a lot of money's been going to that now. Where it's oh yeah, I have a new appreciation for color separation print. So I'm looking at old newsprint stuff now and stuff. But another artist, good friend of mine, just won an Eisner, Jason Liu. He and Chip Zdarsky did a comicsology comic book called Afterlift.
Yeah.
They won. They won an Eisner for best web comic or best online comic.
Oh, sick, dude. Yeah. I haven't been able to check that out. I know that Dark Horse is going to be printing them, if I remember correctly. They have that deal with Comixology, so any Comixology original will be published in print from Dark Horse, I think. So
yeah,
definitely check that out.
That's a great comic book as well too. And I think Chip also is doing Stillwater with Ramon Perez too. That dude, man, he's killing.
Yeah, I mean, I love Zdarsky. Not only is his art good from Sex Criminals, but his writing is just phenomenal. His Daredevil has been. I haven't liked Daredevil this much since Mark Waid was writing the book, or even Ed Brubaker and stuff like that.
He's been really supportive too. Chip, back in the day before when I was starting to do comic books again, we had coffee, and he gave me a good talking down. He basically was very honest with my art at the time, and
Mm.
it really like it really motivated me to be a better artist in that sense. Like he was like, he looked at my stuff and he was just saying, being frank with it and stuff, and it was great. Like and since then, like he was afraid that he might have got me to quit comic books. Uh, but then one day I came up randomly and I showed him like a comp when I started doing all this. I'm like, hey man, just I didn't quit comic books. I just finished this book here. Here it is, man. Thanks so much for kicking my ass and everything. And it's great. And since then he's been very supportive. Like, so whenever if I would sell a book, he would come by and he would buy an issue and stuff like that. And I've been really grateful for that support.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to get a chance to talk to him. I know he doesn't ever do interviews and stuff or podcasts, and especially with conventions, he's not going anywhere. So I would always love to kind of pick his brain because I think he's hilarious. I mean, he's probably one of his Twitter account is probably my favorite Twitter account. So the shit he fucking says on there is just out there,
Have you read his back in his earlier stuff, like Prison Funnies? Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh man, it's he has so much range because he can be like really like that stuff is really dark. It's funny. It's almost like a comedy outlaw comic book.
Okay, I got to check that out. Is it easy to find or is it pretty hard to find?
Might be hard to find now because I think it's I don't think there's like I think it's self-published.
Oh fuck! All right. Well, I'll see if I can hunt one down. Before we get out of here, just a couple more questions. I just wanted to ask. So, what do you find? Like, I mean, you also do music, so you are obviously very, very creative person. Comic books, music can take up a huge chunk of your life. But what do you find most rewarding about each one specifically?
I again, I think it's the whole process of conceptualizing, getting something out of your head and having it there, like in front of you in the paper. And I remember like Alan Moore had this really cool thing about he had I can't fully I'm gonna butcher what he says, but he basically said that he's not a writer, he's a magician. And I think there's a lot to say about that. As ridiculous as crazy it sounds, like if I were to say that, I look like I'm on acid, but he could pull off that. But it really intrigued me in that sense of like that the cool idea of like of thinking what things can be like with death lasers and just the fact how fun it is, because I think that like even with music too, right? Music gets like what I kind of like to do is because I also feel too that like whenever I watch or read a comic book, there is a certain soundtrack to in my head about certain stuff. Like especially when you watch a movie trailer, right? There's something like there's a appealing thing with sound and audio, or picture and audio, that kind of really make you compelled to watch something. And I feel that same way sometimes with like comic books, to combine those two things together in a certain way where you again, it's this thing where I don't want to say self-expression stuff or all those stuff, but I feel like there's all these elements that you apply that you can kind of, I think you're basically like cleaning your head in a certain sense. Like you're taking all the crap that's in your head all the time and just kind of pulling it out there and stuff, so that you can kind of like have some sense of clarity and stuff. And I think also too is I think with making comic books itself, it makes me a better person, because like I now kind of incorporate things to make me a better artist. Like for instance, like I need to eat better, because if I'm like in bad shape, I'm gonna be like cranky, and I'm gonna be crappy at doing this. Or I have to exercise because if I have all this pent up energy and stuff like that, I have to like that's gonna affect me. So I kind of incorporate all those things. And I think also too, for myself as a parent, I have to set an example for my kids to show them that you have to like approach your passions in a certain way. Like to give you some backstory. I was in a warehouse for my 20s for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like I wouldn't pursue comic books because I was so beaten down by just like hauling boxes and working like a warehouse shift and stuff. And I remember on my breaks and my lunch, I'd always time it where I would go like, I eat my lunch for 5 minutes and I would draw on my sketchbook for the next like half an hour, 15 minutes left of lunch or so that, or like my whole break. And I would always do that constantly for 10 years. But I remember like when I finally kind of left that job and went more to creative ventures, just my whole outlook towards everything else kind of really changed. And like, and I think it's important for everyone to kind of pursue that. I mean, like in that sense, like I think, and I think that like when making comic books, there's a really cool communication with other people as well too. I like hearing other people's, I like seeing other people's work, and I love that whole mystery of like of how a different artist makes something up. Like it's so crazy. Like I just, you know, that weird thing where you're like how could you think of that? Or, you know, like it's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, that's why I love comic books because, you know, like you said, everybody has a different outlook, everybody has a different view, and you're getting something different from everyone. I mean, comic books, to me, I love it's for me, I love music and I love comic books, and those are like my two like passions. I don't make music, but I love it. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't live without music, and I can't live without comic books. I mean, they go hand in hand for me. So I love hearing these things from you guys when I talk to you and hearing your passion come through because like you could feel it as I'm talking to you. I can feel how passionate you are about both. You know, and I want to thank you again for chatting with me today. It's been a privilege, man. I mean, I would love to do this again sometime. Definitely next. If anytime you have a project you want to help promote, I'm here for you, dude. You know. And if you could really quick share too, where everybody watching or listening can find you online, and I will drop all those links down below as well.
Well, okay, so I mean, simple thing is you can, if you go on jonathankociuba.com, all my contacts are there for social media and stuff. On Instagram, if you type in Jonathan Kociuba, you could find me, but my Instagram account is called j.s.kaye. I didn't think when I first made the account, you know, I wasn't thinking much about it. You know, I was trying to be cool, and it kind of blew up in my face. But if you type in Jonathan Kociuba, you see like a silhouette of this like iconic, this kind of like silhouette, and you see JSK. That's me, pretty much.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, man. And again, thank you so much, and I look forward to doing this again.
No, thanks, man. It was fun.